Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Coach Tree Corner. I'm Deja, your host. Today we have a very, very, very special guest. I'm so excited and humbled and honored and in a pinch me moment with Rachel Harrington. Hello, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
Just living life, I'm happy to be here and chat.
That's all you can do, right? Like every day is just a new day and you just keep rolling with it.
Exactly. You never know what you're gonna get, right?
Right. And I'm so glad to be talking to you because you're going to teach me and my listeners and everyone around like how to navigate the sensory world, not just with kiddos, but with our own selves, how to co-regulate, but also regulate ourselves, all the things. So I'm going to jump right into Rachel's bio so we can get into all of it. Rachel Harrington is a pediatric occupational therapy assistant with 7 years of experience. She joined Harkla's content creation team in January of 2021 with the goal of spreading her knowledge of all things sensory with the world. Rachel is deeply passionate about making kids feel confident and shine in their own skin. She is always on a mission to help families, therapists, and kiddos navigate the sensory world. She's a big fan of how well Harkla treats their customers and so happy to be a part of it. Rachel loves hiking, playing ping pong, and spending time with her husband, dog, and new baby. I love how personal your bio is. I feel like when I've like created bios in the past, I'm trying to sound all professional. Like I've been to this conference and I've done this and this, but like you're just like, this is me. This is what I
Yes.
love. I got a dog. I got babies. Like,
Honestly, I feel like that's just like me in a nutshell. Like I say things, I
yep.
don't think about them before. I'm a little impulsive. I honestly probably should have changed the dates on those because I just hit my 10-year mark and I have 2 kids now. So whoopsie.
Oh my goodness. That's probably my fault. I'm like snatching things from people's websites and stuff, not even checking. Like, but you are well established. Anyone can go to your website and know that like you're not new to this, you're true to this. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's just jump right in. Can you tell my audience what a CODA is?
Oh my gosh, yes, a CODA, certified occupational therapy assistant. We basically are the implementers of an occupational therapy plan. So we have the OTs or the OTRs who do the evaluations for the kiddos, and then the CODAs generally come in and implement the treatment plan, and we're working with the kiddos. I'm not saying that OTs don't work with the kiddos, but we don't
Mhm.
do the evaluations, the initial evaluations. So we get to play all day and we get to have fun doing it, working with kids. And um, we're just like, we just make such a good team. And it's a really fun
Yeah.
dynamic to be a CODA.
Yeah, I feel like I've worked so much with CODAs and I don't get to see OTs a lot, but I do get to hang out with the CODAs a bunch, which I love. So tell me this before we kind of jump into my next question. How much do you get involved in the like, so say it's a reevaluation for a kiddo?
Mhm. Generally, in my experience, I can't say this for all areas, but in the outpatient pediatric world, I, as a CODA, was doing the re-evaluations, doing
Hmm.
like the testing, the retesting and stuff. And then we would generally collaborate with the OT to update the goals if needed.
Hmm.
We generally write the progress notes, but that that changes, right? So
Hmm.
I got really familiar with doing the re-evals. I really enjoyed that part of it, not the writing, the report side of it, but at least doing
Yeah.
like the testing and stuff. I always love that.
Very, very cool. So what led you to the field of OT?
Well, kind of a funny story. I initially wanted to work with the geriatric population. I heard about OT all through my neighbor who had a hip replacement surgery, and she showed me the
Mm.
sock donor that they gave her. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. This is what I'm going to do. And all going through school, I was like, geriatrics, like, I'm not working with kids. There's no way. And then I graduate and get a job in a pediatric clinic. And I really never looked back after that. So I think that's really important for other therapists who are like going to school or new grads. Like, you don't know where life will take you, You
At
just
all.
never know. I would work like PRN at kind of a transitional rehab facility which is like that was like my goal of what I wanted to do as a therapist, work in a transitional rehab facility for like seniors
Mhm.
and the geriatric population. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be, you know? So
Right.
I feel like in the pediatric world, I'm just like, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, and that can even grow and evolve too, because I was the same way. I was like, all medical, I'm gonna be a med SLP, and then I dipped my toe in it, but I was still like, wait, I kind of like kids because I was also working in the schools, and then even now though, it's like growing and evolving because I'm like, I can do across the lifespan, like so. Yeah, that's such a good
Yeah.
point. What kind of have you only worked in pediatric settings currently?
Yes, like I said, I've done a little bit of PRN work in other
Mm-hmm.
facilities, but my heart is like outpatient pediatric sensory
Mm-hmm.
clinics. That's where my
Gotcha.
background
So
is, at least. Mhm.
Gotcha. So describe your current role and like what a typical day looks like for you now.
Oh, I always say that I'm consistently inconsistent in my day to day. I don't even know what my role, like what my title would be. I So I own 2 businesses that are, like, continuing education, online research, like, sharing resources, and then
Mhm.
I, with my partner, Jessica, had sold our, like, podcast business to Harkla, and so Harkla, acquired us and brought us on, so now I work part-time with Harkla creating content. So I feel like content creator, but I don't like the stigma around content creator, but, like, course creation, continuing education, entrepreneur, I don't even know. So, like, day to day, it always changes. Generally, I'm on the computer creating courses. I just wrote a book. Like, there's so many things. Like, I love to be busy, and I love
Yes.
creating resources to help people.
Like you said, you're just Rachel.
Exactly. You get what you get.
So tell us more about like your passion. Like you said, you have courses and things like that. Tell us more about your passion to help families and therapists and kiddos navigate their sensory world.
Yeah, so really I guess, like, quote unquote areas of expertise would be sensory processing, sensory integration, and primitive reflex integration. After I had my 2 kiddos, I had them, like, pretty close in age. I really struggled myself with, like, regulating my own nervous system and kind of navigating my own sensory needs, and that was really eye-opening because in my work and my practice, it was always about empathizing with our kiddos who have different needs, especially those sensory differences. And once I kind of started to realize, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm struggling in these areas, it made me appreciate even more like what my clients, what my kiddos would go through. And I just realized there were so many adults, so many parents similar to me who are just like, parenthood is just overstimulation in a nutshell. Like, it's just constantly
Yeah.
being stimulated, and it can be really hard to put your oxygen mask on first as an adult, as a parent, and then put your kiddos' masks on. I feel like day to day, we're always like, okay, putting all of our energy into our kiddos. And I just
Mhm.
felt like there was a missing gap in teaching adults and parents how to regulate your own nervous system through sensory needs. And the more work I do with primitive reflex integration, so many of us adults have kind of like, there's so many traumatic experiences we go through. There's so many
Mhm.
experiences that we have, so many layers to the pyramid that a lot of adults are struggling with primitive reflex integration too, which sensory and primitive reflexes, they're so hand in hand and so closely intertwined. It's hard to kind of figure out what it is. And so I've just really had more of a passion for helping other moms, other parents similar to me, and so I share a lot about that. And I love helping kids and creating like courses, primitive reflex courses, sensory diet courses for therapists, for teachers, for parents to take and to learn. I just feel like that's the world that we live in. Like, what can I do? What can I learn from the comfort of my own home? I love to speak. I love like teaching at conferences and stuff like that too. But just feel like after COVID, we don't really have as many of those opportunities because, well,
Yeah.
why not just be at the comfort of our computer teaching, you know?
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna like talk about your education and your tools and your resources a little bit more, but I want to kind of ask you like about how big you've gotten like on social media. Like tell us about how that was. Like, going from, oh, I just want to help. I just want to post, cute videos or whatever and give education and teach to like a whole like community of people like asking, Rachel, how do I do this thing? How did that go? And then how did you meet your partner?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird thing that happened, right? So really it all started I feel like I was on social media before it, like, really got popular. So I started
Mhm.
the Sensory Project back in 2017, and it was all about, like, weighted vests and weighted blankets and like custom sensory products that didn't look like sensory products. So that's where the Sensory Project started. And I named it the Sensory Project because I knew it wasn't just going to stay sensory products. I wanted it to like branch off into different things as I kind of got my traction there. But I was just sharing like, oh, look at this cute weighted vest we made. It's so fun. And there was like 100 people on Instagram back then. Like it wasn't what it is today. And I started the podcast in 2018 with Jessica, who we went to school with, and we worked in the same clinic together. And we just felt like there was a disconnect between what we were teaching our clients and then what we were
Mm,
able to communicate and teach to our parents. So we were like, let's create a podcast, and then they can listen about what we're doing in therapy from listening to the podcast. So
right.
it's just like consistency. I just have always showed
Mhm.
up. I've always just been my authentic, real self. Like, I feel like people come to know these people that they see on social media and they just feel like they know you. Like, I meet people in the community. They're like, oh, hey, Rachel, like, I know you. I follow you on Instagram. Like, some lady at the drive through was like, oh my God, I follow you. I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, you know me, But so it was totally like unexpected and just cool that I'm able to, help so many people just by sharing little things that I found helpful and have helped clients.
Absolutely. And that's so true, right? Like even with starting the podcast and like having to reach out to people, just knowing that people are human and like people want to help and they want to collaborate, it's just don't let those big numbers
Yeah,
scare you, right? From reaching out to people.
exactly.
So, what kind of education and tools and resources are you providing to help caregivers and us therapists understand like our clients' needs from that sensory lens?
I think, lots. It kind of depends on like what platform people are interested in learning from. We have a YouTube channel, a Harkla YouTube channel. Our podcast, All Things Sensory, is like what I always will first recommend to people. Like if they have questions, like, oh, we've done a podcast episode on that. So definitely check
Mhm.
out that. And then we have a lot of free webinars on Harkla. And then the other business that I own, Sensational Brain, is like a continuing education platform for mostly OTs, but we have like speech therapy content and parent content too. But that that resource has free like AOTA approved webinars for
Mhm.
therapists. But really anything that comes down to sensory primitive reflex integration, that's kind of like my love. And um I'm working on like a guide for adults that kind of
Mm.
shares like what I do every day to help my nervous system regulate. So I'm really excited to finish that and to be able to provide more resources for the moms, the dads, the parents, who are like, I can't even get through my day without, breaking down. Right. So
Yeah,
I'm excited about
yeah.
that.
Well, I'm excited about that too because I'm telling you, and we talked about this a little bit before we pressed record. Like us therapists need it too. Like we need to learn how to
Yeah,
regulate everyone. I think it's just something that we don't talk
exactly.
about, right? Like, and so
Mhm.
that's all just so amazing that you're doing that. So let's really jump into the collaboration piece, right? Like the reason why we're here today. So were you always comfortable collaborating across fields? So say SLPs, PTs, things like that?
Yeah, generally in my experience, I have really only collaborated with, like in the clinic setting, it's generally been speech therapists.
Mhm.
And I've always loved it. I felt like there was a bit of a barrier insurance wise to be able to like actually co treat together, which is like what I would ideally love to do. But whenever I was seeing a kiddo, the speech therapist was seeing a kiddo, it was always so fun to just sit down and bounce ideas back and forth. I was always like, please tell me what I can do. And then when a speech therapist would ask me, like, hey, what sensory strategies should I be doing in order to help Johnny, focus better and attend better? Oh, well, let's try putting him on a swing and throwing and doing more crashing, more big body movements. And, all of a sudden the speech takes off. And so I always have loved that part of therapy and treating and working together in a clinic like that. I definitely wish that I could have had the opportunity to collaborate with more professions in the
Yeah,
clinic setting, but I just was limited by who was working at the clinic with me, right? So that was like the
right.
biggest barrier.
Awesome. So if you had to pick one, who would be the like what would be the profession that you would like, I really need to collaborate with them. I've been dying to collaborate with them.
Yeah. I had to think about this one for a minute. I think that vision therapy is
Ah.
something that I would love to be able to, like, work in the same clinic with and work together, collaborate, bounce ideas back and forth. I just find it so beneficial and so fascinating, and it's something that I wanna learn more about myself, but I just feel like so many of our kiddos and, the reflex integration connects with the visual system as
Mhm.
well. So I feel like that there's that component, but there's a lot of OTs who work at vision therapy clinics and who do vision therapy,
Mm.
but it would be cool to have like everyone in one place to be able to work together and to collaborate and connect and okay, we're going to do our sensory work, we're going to work on these underlying things and we're going to go to vision therapy and we're going to work on these things and use these strategies in order to make our vision therapy sessions more beneficial. So,
Yes, and
yeah.
you've got my wheels turning because like we talked about what my vision is for everything, and like
Yeah.
I can't wait to just have this like place where people can be like, oh my gosh, I've never collaborated with so and so. Let me go try to pull a video off of Coaching Corner, you know. So that's definitely my
Yeah.
vision for all of this, and I used to work with a vision itinerant in the school setting, and she had all these different tools and like I'm like, this is so fascinating. And like, if you never worked with one, like, you would just never know these things, right? And so, same thing with
Exactly.
codas. Yep, same thing with
Yeah.
codas, OTs, everything. And so, what are some of your kind of go-to? I mean, and every client is, everything's super individualized. So I get that. But are there any, because we say things like, I don't know if he's a sensory seeker or sensory avoider. And like, I know it's not that black and white, but do you have any kind of like
Mhm.
go tos for like, hey, you can try to do this to figure this out and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I usually recommend trial and error, right? So we're
Hmm.
gonna try different strategies. We're gonna work together to figure out, like for our swing example with Johnny, is linear input gonna be the most beneficial for him, or is he
Mm.
really low arousal? So let's try spinning him a couple of times in each direction, and then we can do our articulation card or whatnot
Hmm.
for our speech connection there. And okay, well, spinning made him too dizzy and he fell over, but the linear input kind of organizes his body and keeps him a little bit more focused. And then after we do 5 swings and 5 cards, then we're going to crash on the crash pad and then we're going to crawl around the room in an infinity loop. So it's really trial and error. And I love it when other professions come to me and say, hey, I've tried all these things, nothing's working. Do you have any suggestions? Because honestly, we all have the same amount of knowledge, but
Hmm.
sometimes coming at it from a different lens and having someone from the outside looking in can be like, oh, well, duh, try this. And you're like, oh my gosh,
Right.
yeah, why didn't I think of that? Right. So it's not like one is better than the other. It's just like you're in the thick of it with a child who maybe has you stumped, but pulling someone from the outside who isn't in the thick of it with you can just give you a totally new perspective that you didn't even think about.
That is so true. Like a communication lens or a sensory lens, motor lens. I've been like collaborating with this PT like almost every day. I feel so bad knocking on her door all the time, like, hey, like, for like my AAC kids, like positioning and all that kind of stuff. It
Yeah.
plays such a big part. So when you are, we talked about collaborating with therapists, but when you're collaborating with parents and caregivers, do do some of them find that it's like hard to see this kind of being integrated throughout their daily routines, or like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's definitely a big barrier, and I've definitely learned more empathy
Yeah.
since I've become a parent myself, right? Because I was always so frustrated with, carryover and home exercise programs. I'm like, no one is doing these things that I'm recommending. Like, what is it? And I'm like, oh, because there's no time and your kids don't want to listen to you as the parent, right? So if you're adding that extra dynamic of, okay, now we're going to do these exercises, these activities every day, it's so difficult. So I think that the biggest thing for me is asking the families that I'm working with, how much time do you have to implement this? Like, what do you feel like realistically you can implement? I put it on them, and that way they can say, I have 5 minutes after dinner before bedtime that we can do something together. What do you want me to do in that 5 minutes? And that way I can be like, okay, this is the main thing we need to work on. This is what
Hmm.
we're going to try, and then come back and say, okay, how did it go? What went well? What didn't? Then we're going to modify and then we're going to change
Hmm.
it. So giving them the control. And then when they don't carry it over, change it up. Be like, okay, what didn't work? Let's fix it. Let's adapt it. Let's modify. And having that clear communication with them saying that OT once a week isn't going to make a big difference if we're not implementing the strategies at home as well, at school, in all the different settings. So having that clear conversation up front with the parents and caregivers, it's really helpful for them to understand that, one day a week for an hour for 30 minutes is great. It's going to be very beneficial, but we have to be carrying over and implementing these things in different environments too.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And so, would you say that empathy piece and that clear communication, would you say that's your biggest lesson when it comes to collaboration, or do you have a few other gems for us?
Um, I think yes, empathy, communication, and just being patient and
Hmm.
remembering that, progress isn't going to happen overnight. And once we can understand and start kind of like treading water and making progress with a client, let's keep it going, but let's continue to make that just right challenge, right? In OT, we always
Hmm.
focus on the just right challenge. And I think so often in therapy, we can get comfortable and we can get um, complacent. And so I think that we always need to be looking for the next challenging thing for our child to
Hmm.
complete, and just really pushing them, really pushing ourselves as therapists, pushing parents and caregivers as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just think that not getting complacent and just really fighting for the progress that we want to see, and advocating for that.
I love that. And I 100% agree. So I have had such a good time talking to you and learning from you. And I am just so excited for everyone else to like, who, if you're not already following you, to follow you and to learn about all of this stuff. So can you tell us about some of your free resources, webinars, courses? I took your pediatric like development course. Oh my God. So good. So good. So yes, tell my listeners
Yay!
all
Oh,
about your free
that's so
resources and
great.
also paid ones as well.
Yes, I would say definitely. Start with our free webinars on Harkla. Those kind of outline our full courses, and we're in the. I think we have one more course that we're working on right now, our classroom course to get AOTA CEU'd, but our primitive reflex course, our infant toddler early intervention course, and our sensory diet courses, those are all AOTA approved now, and they're big courses with
Hmm.
so many beneficial resources. But the free webinars kind of give you a taste as to what you're going to get with the full webinar, and they're really helpful as well. A couple of free webinars on sensational brain, using visuals to support sensory diets, executive functioning, and then another like Just Right program, which is a sensory modulation curriculum for the classroom. And yeah, podcast, YouTube, Instagram, we're always sharing free resources there. And I'm happy to help if anyone wants to reach out and bounce ideas back and forth and kind of, you know, keep my head in the game. I love it.
Yeah. And so, yes, you have so many free resources. So, tell us about some of those paid. Do you have like memberships and things like that?
Yes. On Sensational Brain, we have a sensory diet creation membership, which is an annual membership. And it's really cool because you can use the visual cards that we design for making sensory diets, visual schedules, reflex integration programs. So that's a really cool resource that I recommend to therapists. And there's a bunch of other resources inside the membership as well. But that's an annual membership, which is super cool. And then paid courses, we've got a bunch of courses on Harkla, and then reflex integration, sensory diets, early intervention, and then hundreds of courses on sensational brain for therapists. And yeah, I have a couple of guides on
Mhm.
the sensory project, just like linked in my Instagram bio, but all the things. And I just wrote my book, which is available for pre order right now at the time of this, and that's on sensational brain.
Love it. And on top of all of this, guys, she's a dog mom, a real mom, like like has a husband, all the
Like
things.
ping
Like
pong.
you play ping pong. Like it's just crazy, crazy. So you can find Rachel at actually Rachel, just tell us all your socials. I don't want to mess them up.
Oh my gosh. Okay. The Sensory Project 208, Sensational Brain, All Things Sensory Podcast, and Harkla_family. Those are like the four socials that you can find me at.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I've learned so much in so little time. Like I feel like that much more confident in like helping my kiddos with all things sensory. And we're definitely gonna have to have you on a part two because this was amazing.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good one, Rachel.
Thank you.